The pilot started the camera shortly after takeoff, and it ran until the aircraft crashed down through the trees, about 6.5 minutes later. The NTSB's probable cause says that the airplane departed Granby on August 10, 1984, and failed to arrive at its destination. On August 23rd of 1987, 3 years later, it was found on the slope of a high tree-covered ridge. Videotape recovered from the wreckage provided a visual and audio record of the flight from takeoff to impact. Comparing the recording to a topographical map, the flight was climbing and its altitude above ground was decreasing when it crashed at the 10,200-foot level. And during the last few seconds of the tape, the terrain dominated the view through the cockpit window. The pilot made it a 60-degree bank, and the stall warning horn could be heard 3 times during approximately 180 degrees of turn. The airplane subsequently stalled, flipped over, and entered the trees. The density altitude was about 13,000 feet. I live just a few miles away from this accident site. So I'll just play the video and kind of walk you through the steps as we get closer and closer to when the crash finally occurred. This is right after takeoff from the Granby Airport. They're climbing, headed eastbound in almost a straight line, and I'll kind of overlay a map from ForeFlight on here to kind of show you the route of flight. What's really very apparent throughout this entire flight is that the terrain ahead of the aircraft is constantly rising.
Oh, look at that down there, Ronnie, on the left. Nice little lake and a cabin.
The pilot is pointing out to his passenger, Ronnie, the different features of terrain. He just said that there was a little cabin down there below them. But what's really obvious here and alarming from a pilot's perspective is that you can clearly see off in the distance, right there for the first time, those peaks. Those are 13,000, there's some 14,000 foot peaks. And these guys just took off from an 8,200 foot elevation runway. So we're talking 6,000 foot elevation gain. And the airport, the destination airport for them is only about 40 nautical miles away. So it's a very short distance, but the terrain between them is the Continental Divide, and it runs north to south directly along that route of flight. So as we go along here and progress, this tape just kind of builds and builds. We're not going to watch the entire 6 minutes. He just pointed out the beetle kill pine below the aircraft.
A whole bunch of them back up in here, those beetles.
Yep. So what I'm going to do is fast forward the video to a spot that really shows just how tight these guys are flying and how close to the terrain. So he's going to be approaching this ridge line. Now, you can see if he had gone a little bit to the right, he had to actually turn left to avoid this terrain feature. When the trees pass under him, he's maybe 20, 30 feet above this tree line here. Barely missed it. Now, a rule when you're approaching a ridgeline is if you don't start to see terrain on the other side of it as you get closer, that means that you're below the ridgeline. And when he was originally approaching that little spot right there, you could tell he was on an impact path. And even here, he is just about at the tree level. Look how close they are. That's just amazingly low. He's only maybe 50 feet, if that. And this lake here, this is called Meadow Creek Reservoir. It is a remote reservoir. It's in the summertime. Typically, there are a lot of campers, sometimes fishermen on the lake. This particular summer must have been pretty low.
Pretty low lake.
Pretty low occupancy. In 1984, there weren't a lot of people in Colorado yet, so pretty quiet. I was 8 years old. I was literally 5 miles away from here physically. He just continues up this, what is a mountain valley, and clearly you can see that giant peak ahead of him is rising up to about 14,000 feet. So he's not going to be able to continue straight. That little road down there to the left, that road goes to a trailhead. So there are people in this area, there are hikers, but in this particular day, no one witnessed anything. So unfortunately for them. This is the little meadow right here. You're thinking, man, turn around, you know, turn left, turn right. He's kind of drifting here to the right. In this valley, there is enough room for him to turn around here. There's enough room for him to make a left turn and safely turn around. And you'd think he would have turned by now. And I'm just amazed. I'm just sitting here thinking, wow, guy, when are you going to turn? There's another meadow there to his 12 o'clock and off to the left side of the aircraft. And even here, if he turned left, he would be able to make it out okay. Here we go. You can see the ridge line there is above the aircraft. He's in a steep bank now. That's an accelerated stall. Stall horn. He's continuing to pull back on the stick. The aircraft spins to the left, hits the trees, and that's it. 3 years it took for that footage to be discovered. If you follow along here, Granby is only about 40 nautical miles from Jeffco Airport and on a straight line. And the mountain pass, there was no mountain pass for them to go over. The mountain that they tried to cross would have been 13,500 foot north Arapahoe Peak. And you can see from the line that I drew, if you look right about where I'm placing this marker is where they crashed the aircraft. So clearly rising terrain, dramatically rising terrain from Granby up to this peak in this valley. The little reservoir that they crossed over, the aerial map, is right here. So they crossed right over the top of this reservoir, continued up, and kind of crashed in this area here. So very remote. There's not a lot of, obviously there wasn't a lot of hiking activity in 1980s when they were there. But the route that I would choose, we've got KGNB, KBJC. I fly to the south from Granby over Winter Park ski area. It's very prominent. You fly over the Fraser Valley right here, makes it a lot easier. And then you get your altitude and you're over the valley, climbing safely. There's plenty of opportunities to land. Get up to about 12,600 to 13,000. You see Rollins Pass here is 11,600 feet. You notice here north is 12,940 and to the south is 12,700 or 12,070 feet. So Rollins Pass is about 400 feet lower. And then you're going to cross to the northeast over the pass. And the second you cross over, the terrain just drops dramatically. And you can see Denver and you can see the Front Range. There are a lot of places to land. Eldora ski areas right here, Netherland, Rollinsville. There's all kinds of, there are people, there are roads, there are places, flat spots to land. And then you can call up, it's called Rocky Mountain Metro now, but I call it Jeffco because it's always been that for me. Call them up and land there. And these guys could have easily taken off out of Granby, flown to the south and climbed. If you don't have the performance, you can't get up to altitude, then you can safely turn around and land and wait for cooler temperatures. So it's a much better and safer alternative for flying this route. It's just unfortunate these poor guys made that decision that day and had to pay the ultimate price.